that's the emergency exit, and that's the way we'll go out at the end of the presentation. And because we're on such a tight time scale, if you can go out as soon as possible, unless you're staying for the next one, of course. Telephones off, please. And if you could take your rubbish away with you, if you've got your cups or what have you, that will be a great help to us. So, thank you very much. We'll start.
So, namaste friends. My name is Mohit Aggarwal and I'm from Asian Adventures, but rest of my introduction will happen later. I will start with telling you the intent of this session. It's about development and improvement of bird tourism in the Himalayas. And this is a small slideshow to tell you how beautifully it's turned out in the Himalayas, how the local people of the area have started taking on bird watching tourism seriously as their profession. And so this slideshow will give you more knowledge about the Himalayan bird watching tourism when you get to India, or to Nepal for that matter. So let me just quickly tell you about ecotourism. Ecotourism is all about sustainable tourism in natural areas. And sometimes we mistake and we say it's non-sustainable tourism in natural areas, and that's not ecotourism. So this is just to clear the definition of ecotourism as said by UNWTO. Ecotourism is a science in itself. It's not just a mere concept. It's got certain kind of science to it, and if you understand ecotourism in its depth, it will mean a lot more to you. There are some interesting facts, and as you see that on eBird, we've got 722 new spots in one state of Himalayas, which is called Uttarakhand, and it is near Delhi. So it's 722, and that's only happened because there have been so many bird watchers, there have been so many people getting involved with this activity of bird watching. Let me go back to the same slide, and it says that we've got about 15 million people, international tourists coming into India. This is 2017 or 18 data. We don't have the new one. And there's almost no data available as to what the proportion of bird watching tourism is out of this 15 million, 14.5 million people. There are these key hotspots in different states, right from Kashmir and Ladakh right up to Arunachal Pradesh, that I will briefly talk about. And I'm going to seek help from my friend Mike Prince, who has lived in India for a long time, just to give you the perspective, the Western perspective, or his perspective of how he thinks about certain areas. So the 5 places that I'm talking about is Ladakh, which is right next to Kashmir, and then Kashmir itself. And adjacent to this is Himachal Pradesh up in the Himalayas, which has the Great Himalayan National Park. And then you have Chopta and Eagle Nest, and then some other areas near Nainital and Corbett Park. So over to you, Mike, about these 2 or 3 places.
Okay, I'll give you a very quick run through of these places because there's rather a lot to cover on that. Just to pick up a little bit on what Mohit said, I've lived in India for about the last 15 years, and part of that has been working for an NGO that has been promoting bird watching in India, trying to encourage people to take up bird watching, and also encouraging people to record data properly. So you'll see Mohit showed some statistics from eBird, and birdwatching in India has boomed in recent years. What's also interesting about it, I think, and just looking around the room a little bit here to see we're all a bit grey-haired in here. I'm probably about average age, but it's been booming in the youngsters. So most of the people taking up birdwatching are probably their students, they're in their 20s, and it really bodes well for the future of just wildlife awareness and protection in India. Anyway, back to the Himalayas a little bit. I'm just going to talk through very briefly about some of these places from the bird point of view, and then hand back to Mohit. Eagle Nest. A few of you might have heard of Eagle Nest. It's in the eastern Himalayas, so it's on the Bhutan border in the state of Arunachal Pradesh. So some of you have been to India. You've probably the most usual bit of the Himalayas you've been to is Uttarakhand, as Mohit was pointing out, accessible from Delhi. Eagle Nest in the eastern Himalayas is just an incredible area of forest. The eastern Himalayas has so much more diversity in bird life. It's a bit more difficult to bird in there. But Eagle Nest itself, as a sanctuary, has had close to 500 species recorded in it. And until about 20 years or so ago, it wasn't accessible to foreigners. I can't remember whether that changed about that time ago. But there's an interesting story from Eagle Nest which shows what's left to be discovered. This chap here, Ramana, who's a part-time bird watcher, or professionally an astronomer, he was in Eagle Nest working with the local tribes and trying to look at doing some kind of local conservation and tourism. And he'd been there a few times, and in 1995, he saw a bird that he didn't recognise. He just glimpsed this bird, didn't see what it was. Anyway, he sort of forgot about it. And it was 10 years later, in 2005, when he saw it again. I don't know what this is. And eventually he thought it was a type of leocicla, a Chinese bird, Himalayan leocicla. And it was seen better in 2006 and then described, and it turns out this particular bird is new to science. This bird was unknown. And it's unknown in the most populous country, imagine. It's actually not a skulking brown bird, like most of the new discoveries here, but it's quite brightly coloured, and this is undiscovered. So he'd already started a project there, and then he discovered this bird, it's new to science, described as new to science, the Bugan leocicla, named after the local tribe. So what he's done is developed the tourism in the area all through the local tribes, and it's actually the local tribe who protect the area rather than the forest department. So it's one of the examples of lots of good ecotourism. Just to sort of finish on Eagle Nest, the Bugan leocicla possibly has as low as about 14 or 15 birds in the world. It's been searched for in lots of areas around, and it's almost not found outside of a 2-kilometre square area. Thankfully, usually quite easy to see in that area if you go to the right spot, and we were lucky in April. But as I said, Eagle Nest is probably the most diverse place to go birding in the Himalayas. It covers from the plains up to about 3,000 metres, and then you can go up to the Himalayas and the snow-capped areas at about 4,000 metres. So when you're birding there, you'll come across a flock, maybe 20, 30 species in the flock. You go to another site in Eagle Nest, maybe 1,000 metres higher, and the 20 to 30 species flocks are all different species. So it's quite an experience and one to visit, certainly. Do you want to slide? Yeah. And there we are. Pretty good bird. How did that remain undiscovered all that time? A couple of the other birds are just on that. Elatura, which was the one with the call. If anyone knows, that's fairly unique in that it's the only species in its genus in the world. Lots of fulvetters, lots of these small birds, these flocks here. Going back west, so Ladakh, some of you may know. Ladakh is, well, it's not strictly speaking the Himalayas, it's the trans-Himalayas, or over the top of the Himalayas, sort of western edge of the Tibetan plateau. And again, this was an area not really very well known by birders until a Swiss guy, Otto Pfister, stayed there. He was working there and did quite a lot of birding there. Produced this book in I think 1994, and since then, again, birding has boomed through local tourism. Certainly had no local birding guides. Birding just wasn't known at that time. It's also an area. Anyone who's done a snow leopard tour, Ladakh is brilliant for snow leopards. And there's a lot of work done with local conservation, local tourism, because snow leopards are an issue for taking livestock. So a lot of the local guides and people were trapping snow leopards years ago, and now they're very well protected there through local schemes, and we produce lots of local guides. So brilliant place to go birding, and also, unlike most of India, it's brilliant in June, July, August when the weather isn't so good elsewhere. So. And this is some of black-necked crane, it's one of the birds that breeds in the Himalayas, and in Bhutan, it's the other place you're likely to have seen that. Great Himalayan National Park, so a little bit closer to where some people might have been. It's in Himachal Pradesh. But again, it's just difficult to access, like so many of these areas, so it's hardly ever visited. This it says there, it's trekking enthusiasts used to go here. So if you want to go, you'd probably have to camp for a week. But what has happened there is there's one bird that is really special here. It's not quite endemic to India, it goes to Pakistan as well. But the western Tragopat, absolutely stunning bird that until recently had no photographs from the wild at all. And if you want to see pheasants, Great Himalayan National Park is a wonderful place to go. The cheer pheasant, Tragopat, Kelly spotless pheasant as well. But again, the trekking guides, the local outfits is all community-based, local people running these camps and treks. Yeah. So that's just a whistle stop of some of the key places in the Himalayas.
So Western Tragopan has been hunted traditionally because they, people like to wear the crest in their caps. And with the realization of birding tourism, a whole lot of these people who were earlier hunting have started to become guides, and they've been employed by the Forest Department to take people out trekking. And since they know the stakeouts very well, you go straight to the places where these birds are. So that's a shift that's happened in the Great Himalayan National Park. It's a very rich park and a very, very big park up in the Himalayas, which is hardly monitored by forest guards really. So a lot is dependent on the local people who were earlier hunters are now conservationists. A quick thing about me, I've been trained in ecotourism, in sustainable tourism by GSTC, and I'm a board member of Asian Ecotourism Network. My company is on a mission to help Asian elephants with their corridors. We're delving into pangolin conservation in the state of Gujarat, and we're also working on reducing and setting up a model village for zero waste up in the Himalayas. So that's the goal of these are the goals of the company, and there's work in progress. Of course, because of COVID, it's slowed down, but we're now going to pick up pace again this year. In the Himalayas over the last 20 to 25 years, there've been tour operators, Indian tour operators, there've been foreign tour operators, and they've been assisted by the local people for a long time. Now, after the recession got over in 2010-11, we had a huge amount of money coming into India, and people bought cameras and they bought scopes and binoculars, and they started to move around in the hills into the Himalayas, for not just for birds but for photography, and that sort of empowered a lot of local people to guide them. And the Forest Department and a lot of NGOs saw that as a great possibility for building capacity. And we've been working with such people, such associations to train guides across the Himalayas. There are almost 15 entrepreneurs that have opened up their own companies. Hundreds of guides have been trained, and they now do their own business of guiding and taking people around in different genre. So those are the positives of avitourism, as I would see. And of course, the advent of social media, Facebook and Instagram, WhatsApp, that's brought many opportunities to people who are at the grassroots level. The smartphones have, while they've played havoc in different ways, they've also added a lot of value to people's lives. And then there was a lot of work done by people earlier, Chris and Raj Singh and Bikram, and so the guides are floating out in the market, which tells them that you turn left and you go across these 5 shops and you look below, and then that's where you will find a spotted folktail and such kind of information that existed that time, which was true to an extent, and it also sort of brought exploratory attitude towards people, So they started to find many new locations. So these books have done fantastic amount of good work in bringing up bird watching tourism in these areas. in 2001, we set up this lodge called Jungle Lord Birding Lodge. It is near Nainital. And the purpose of setting up this lodge was to promote bird watching tourism as a concept. So that people would say, oh, what is bird watching tourism? Indians would be, they wouldn't have any idea. Why would anybody watch birds? So we've managed to convert many tourists into ecotourists, empower many people as guides. And that's what the job has been. So it's the first birding lodge of the country, and I'm really proud of my team to have done this. So this was the Sartal birding camp, and now Sartal is full of bird guides. It's got hides, and it's got trekking trails, and it's got a whole lot of photos coming from that area, and people are talking about conservation there. So, just about. But of course there are challenges, there's dilution of culture because, if the Western tourists come there, they're dressed up in this beautiful attire from North Face while we are still in our pajamas and kurtas. And then they say, oh, why can't I be dressed up like that in those khaki clothes? And, so there's dilution of culture and there's over-tourism and many other things as you can see here. But then Bhutan is a great example in the Himalayas where you can see that people are wearing these clothes called kiras, and they're still bird watching with you in their traditional attire, and they're serving you food, and they're maintaining the traditional architecture while you stay there. So that sort of completes the entire spectrum of experiences. It's not just about listing birds in the evening or seeing what you've done in the day, but it's also plugging in their traditions, their value systems, and that is where ecotourism makes a very fine turn. And then we went ahead and we created a small restaurant. We helped the small restaurant of a community to sustain themselves, so that these people wouldn't run to Delhi and Bombay to seek jobs. They became great bird guides, and they started to take people around for bird watching, and now they're well-to-do, and they've created their homestays, and they're also involved with elephant conservation corridor, elephant corridor conservation. So that sort of is in line with our goal as well. And then, so these are the periodic things that we continue to do as business, because my philosophy of business is that it's our dharma, the ethos of any business is to make this place a better world. So if whatever business we're doing, what is it that is giving back to Mother Earth is what we need to keep looking at as we go along. So that's me training more and more people. That's a periodic training that I do. Whatever I learn, I don't know everything, but whatever I learn, I try and teach them so that they can go a step further too along with me. So some of the wildlife areas where we have contributed a lot, these are the elephant corridor boards, and we've contributed to Wildlife Trust of India. I'm also the founder member of Wildlife Trust of India. So a lot of our money that we make as profit goes back into conservation. Yeah. So Global Wildlife Fair is an attempt that we will be making very soon. This is not afterthought after Global Bird Fair. This was registered much earlier. So this was Global Wildlife Fair, and it's not fair as to have a fair. It's about celebration of life. So Global Wildlife Fair was created to create a marketplace for ecocentric things, so that people could come and buy things or sell things, and also if there are people seeking funds for conservation, then there would be people, they can put up their plans there, and we would help them get across to the right funders. Nature Science Initiative conducted studies in Pangot on microplastics and the impact of microplastics on wild animals, and the results were jaw-dropping. Asian Ecotourism is what I'm a member of, a board member, very active there. Chintan is helping us in zero waste project up in the Himalayas. Kilmora is a women organization up in the Himalayas. It's a social enterprise. We help them with digital marketing free of cost, so that the young girls and the women can empower themselves to sell their products and to make their life more meaningful. CGVS is where we have set up the small restaurant that you saw called Corbett Gram Vikas Samiti. So these are the future things: sustainable accommodations, communities, ownership, creation of ecotourism, and influences for sustainable tourism. I would really love to see more and more influences of sustainable ecotourism if possible. Thank you very much. Jai Hind. Thank you. Yes, so if anybody wants to connect with me for any questions or any information, I am in S27 Swallow Marquee. So the stand number is S27. Thank you.
Okay, folks, would you like to leave?